dia.
Bom dia.
That's all my Portuguese.
Okay, that works. So, Oscar, welcome to Cubo.
Well, thank you.
It's very great for us to have you here today. So, let's start by the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where are you from, what you have studied, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm originally from Mexico, a small city in Mexico by the Pacific. Engineer by training, did my master's in Canada, University of Calgary. Spent 2 years there doing my master's in electrical engineering. And then I went to Paris for my PhD, computer science, telecommunications, mainly routing protocols, meaning moving packets, from data packets from one point to another. So my background, it's scientifically pretty much and moving things around. So that's why, I moved to New York in 2007. And a former colleague of mine, fellow student at the University of Calgary in 2008 pitched me this idea about buying some cars and sharing them with friends because he couldn't get a taxi in San Francisco. And because I had experience doing routing protocols. So he asked me if I can actually help him build a prototype. At that time, the name of the project was Uber Cab. That was his idea, pretty much the name. And I started working with him in 2009 as mainly as an architect. I put all the pieces together, and developed the prototype. And then, the company took off with, Travis joined, and I just became what it is right now, Uber. But yeah, my contribution was pretty much figuring out all the pieces, early stage, putting all the pieces together, creating the apps, the driver app, the passenger app, the dispatch, and all the little details, that made the experience seamless and transparent, which is cashless payments, geolocation, smart dispatching of the vehicle, and the rating system that brings a little bit of governance into the system. Is a double rating system where the passenger can rate the driver and vice versa. So, and then, after spent two years, a little less than 2 years there, I'm an engineer. What I like is building stuff. I'm not an executive or somebody that is going to scale a business. So that's what I've been doing after. I've been, either creating projects or helping people build companies, both as an investor, advisor, and also hands-on, pretty much strategies and technologies, helping people, to realize their dreams with the use of technology.
But your career started in the public sector, right? And you did a little bit of academic research.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about this transition between public, academic research, and then entrepreneurship?
Yeah, academic. I published more than 20 papers in scientific journals. I did a peer review, also articles in important journals like IEEE. So I always wanted to be a professor, and I think I might be. I'm still young, or I think so. And then after Uber, I decided, because I like to work in very inefficient and unsexy industries. Like trucking and, waste management, all this kind of crazy stuff. And after Uber, I decided to go and try to fix civic participation. So I created a company, it was City Vox. Pretty much was, what we did is we scrapped social media, and we analyzed all these tweets and reports from citizens and presented that in a very nice format, to government officials. It went pretty well in the sense that I funded this with $3,000, and we were making $1.5 million in less than a year in revenue with a team of 5 people. It's pretty good. The problem is that, as usual, in technology, there's a factor that we underestimate, which is timing. I was too early to game. Officials, you know, and not because of the government side, mostly because in the investor side. So investors just didn't get it. And also a partner with very unsophisticated investors, you know, especially in Latin America, that they didn't get the vision. And they, so I decided to put this in the back burner. I bought all the assets. And you know, right now I'm starting to. There's a project that I'm advising on right now that it's pretty much reusing that technology, and we're going to launch next year. So I'll let you know about it. But pretty much what it's going to do is it's targeted to millennials, and it's about civic engagement using social media and content that like video and stories. You know, using like a platform like Snapchat. Or all this, or messaging, you know, which are, you know, the best platforms to communicate and spread ideas. So, so I'm still, you know, working actively on the social and public, but I decided just to put this project down a little bit.
Interesting. You came from Mexico. Do you think that technology can help with civic engagement, and this is important for emerging countries like Mexico or Brazil?
Yeah.
Or how can technology help civic engagement?
It's all about education, right? It's about. I don't think that you know that technology can fix democracy, because democracy was invented by the Greeks, like, you know, 1,000 years ago, and it's just it's a system that that it has to be redesigned. So, but what technology can actually do can help people, can educate people, and can make political participation more transparent and open. And I'm just going to give you an example. And you can see, you know, the election, the U.S. election, you know, this year, which is totally crazy. So for the first time in history, you know, you have a person with no political experience with the high probabilities of becoming, you know, the president of the most powerful country in the world. And that was made possible because of social media. Most of his campaign has been, you know, driven by social media, especially Twitter. So definitely, you know, new technologies are helping, you know, spread news and educate people in a good or a bad way. So I think the second step, you know, to fix, you know, civic participation is if you can actually record public transactions on a public ledger. And let's say, for example, you have, you know, all the properties, the registered, you know, when you have a house, you register your property, and it's public, it has to be public. But right now, what we have in a government database, and the government decides how to make it public. You know, so right now you need to go to the office, and then you go to this bureaucratic process, and then you get the information. But what if in the future we can use, for example, the blockchain technology, which is, you know, the protocol that is the Bitcoin is built on top of it, to register all these transactions and make it available to everybody just with a click of a button. So I think technology is gonna be used to create efficiencies in a highly inefficient ecosystem that can actually drive and increase civic participation. Do I think technology is going to fix democracy? I don't. But it can actually help enhancing certain processes within the democracy.
Interesting. And later came Pager and Ride.com. What are those companies? What do they do?
Pager is the one that I'm mostly involved right now. It takes, you know, most of my time. When I got to the U.S., one of the things that surprised me is how inefficient is access to healthcare in the most powerful country in the world. Especially coming from France, where health system is universal and anybody can actually go and get a doctor's appointment. So, because again, I like to work in very unsexy and very complex problems, because I don't know if I'm crazy, I might be. I decided to, with no expertise, you know, in healthcare, I decided to pretty much try to fix it. So the first assumption was, can we make doctors more available? And there's a system in France called SOS Médecin. What they do, it's pretty much, it's a house call service. You call a doctor comes to your house, the doctor performs, you know, the visit, and then, you know, the government subsidizes it. There are 6 million visits performed every year in France, and it's although people think that it's very inefficient, it's not, because it helps, to drive down the cost of healthcare. So, so basically we were talking and saying, why don't we bring this to the 21st century? So a lot of people, you were saying, especially the press, were comparing this like Uber for doctor, but it's not that. It's more than that. Basically what Pager does, it's an app that you click a button, we connect you via chat with an ER trained nurse. So you chat with the nurse, you tell the nurse what you have. The nurse gets the information, and we use artificial intelligence to help the nurse to triage you better. So basically we do natural language processing in real time on your chat, and we can say, based on the chat, this is the probability of this person having this, and this. So the nurse then, she decides basically which triage protocol she's gonna trigger. Once she understands your case, she sends you to the right venue of care. It can be a telemedicine visit, it can be an in-person visit, or she can refer you to the closest walk-in clinic or hospital. So doing this, by creating this technology and putting it together, we're driving engagement, patient engagement with healthcare services, and we're driving the cost down of healthcare. So this is what Pager does, and I'm very excited about this company, because it's one step to have real and more efficient and universal access to healthcare. Still early stages, but I think it's the data, is showing pretty interesting and promising, returns. So that's Pager, right? It's a different story. It's a private equity-owned project that it's a legacy business. It's called the V-Ride. That was, the name of the company. That it's pretty much corporate shuttles, to take pretty much people from their homes to their work. It's carpooling. It's a very traditional carpooling, but it's done, in a very untraditional way. 80,000 trips a day. It's a legacy. So basically, right, it's a redesign of that old business, and we're just adding, technology, more efficiencies. And it's not. I mean, we didn't make it public, but we already sold to Enterprise. The company, which is Enterprise, is the largest. The largest private-owned car rental network. So, they acquired, V-Ride a couple months ago. We didn't make it public, but that's not my company. I was technology advisor to them, so I help them out to build the technology on top to creating efficiencies in a highly inefficient industry, which was, this one. So this is what I do right now.
Sure. You said that you like unsexy things.
Yes.
What are the hot areas for entrepreneurs that you should consider today?
Well,
that people should consider
one of the
today?
companies, well, there's two companies that I'm very proud of. One is CargoX. Obviously, that's why I'm here, in Brazil. Trucking, it's very unsexy, it's fragmented, the opportunities are big. And the other one that I'm, the two big, more important for me right now this year, in my portfolio, it's CargoX, and the other, it's called Rubicon Global. It's an Atlanta-based waste management company. So waste management hasn't changed since, the Romans in Rome. Rome is, like 2,000 years ago. So we dispose, we deal with trash the same way the Romans did, which is we just dig up a hole and we put it there and then we cover it. That's it. That's what we do. Which is crazy. In some countries, recycling is more efficient, we're getting there, but the reality is waste management hasn't changed at all. So basically, why this company? Well, I found this company because it was a small company in Atlanta with amazing revenue and no assets. So basically what they did, they were pretty much like a broker. They were, they got an account, and they identified the truck, and they identified the driver, and then they identified the dump, and they connected all the dots. So it was an asset-free waste management company making very good revenue. The problem with these companies is that because you don't use technology, you cannot optimize, and your growth is capped. So if you get there, you understand, what they're doing, there's the value proposition that is working, and it's having, some environmental or social impact. And the only thing they did is, what I did is I invested money there. I helped them change the organizational structure, the culture of the company. We hired, some engineering talent. we start adding, you know, software to create efficiencies. And the company right now is growing incredibly crazy. So basically, just to give you an example, and this is public, when I joined the company as an investor and an advisor, the company was worth $50 million. They just closed around valuing the company at a little bit more than $500 million, and that was like less than a year after I joined. So so with all the big names, you know, Goldman Sachs, so and all these big investors. So this is an interesting story of a very legit business in a very unsexy areas that is limited by the lack of technology, and that's what I like. You know, like the unsexy the business, the bigger the opportunity.
What about CargoX? And why a company in Brazil? Have you been here before? Do you know how the country works?
I like Brazil. It's a good excuse to, you know, it's a good excuse to, so my wife can, you know, let me travel to Brazil. You know, I have a good excuse. But other than that, I think it's Brazil. You know, I don't like hype. So when something is hyped, I try to stay out of it. So I stayed out of Latin America for a long time because I wanted to see the world, to learn about it, and then to start doing stuff when I thought, you know, the time was right. 2012 for me, it wasn't right. You know, I just felt that there was, you know, too much hype. So I wanted to be patient and say, let's wait until, you know, the dust is settled and see what remains there. And what remains there are the winners. So let's pick an area where I have expertise, where I can add value and bring value, and I can help, you know, the entrepreneur. So basically, you know, when I partner with a company, it's about the idea, it's about the industry, and also about the team, you know, the entrepreneur. So and we have, you know, some friends in common. So I was introduced to Fede, you know, the CEO, you know, in New York in a conference. And I just like the guy, you know, he's driven. The company was doing some interesting stuff. You know, they have accomplished a lot with very low, you know, resources, of close to zero, you know, resources. So it just made sense, you know. I'm very agnostic, you know, to the country, you know, in this point in my life. I really care about the region, Latin America, and this is a region that I think that has more potential. I look at the world, you know, I have some people looking at stuff, you know, in China, India, and for me, you know, culturally and economically, makes way more sense, you know, to focus on this region because the opportunity is right here. If you look at companies like the fastest growing area, you know, for Uber, for example, after China is Latin America, and this is public information. So it just makes sense. Airbnb, WeWork, you know, they're expanding Latin America. You know, so at the end of the day, so that's why, you know, Latin America makes sense. Brazil makes a lot of sense because of the size of the country, because of the penetration of the technology, and because it shares a lot of things in common with Mexico. We live in two worlds, you know, in the same country. You have the world where everybody, you know, with upper classes, they have access to everything, and then you have, you know, the bottom of the pyramid, you know, they have access to very low, you know, very few services. So with the right use of technology, you can bridge this gap and you can actually make a lot of money. So that's for me, that's why, you know, Brazil. So it's just aligning perfectly, you know, to the everything is aligning, timing, you know, economy. And at the end of the day, people ask me, you know, because when I decided to invest in this company was when in the middle of this political, you know, situation. But what I tell people is like, this is a political crisis. It's not really a crisis. And I'm Latin America, so I've dealt with crisis before my whole life, especially in Mexico. So I'm not afraid of it. So the bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunity.
No, this is great. And do you see Uber, for example, competing with CargoX someday? Let's say that they are going to offer Uber for trucks.
Well, they just said that they just bought a autonomous truck company, Auto, and you know, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry in the transportation, you know, domain. So they're going to go after it. But at the end of the day, what I believe is you need to control the network. You know, in trucking especially, it's all about controlling the network. autonomous trucks and all this technology, they're great, you know, in theory, but at the end of the day, they're gonna become commodity in the next 2-3 years. Everybody's gonna build, you know, autonomous truck. Anybody can actually build one right now. So at the end of the day, it's about the data and the network that you have. So competing, yes, could compete, you know, but also, you know, in this world where you need to grow, also partnership is the right word, you know. So absolutely, I think there's, if Uber is a smart company and they want to go after this multi-billion-dollar market, so that I would totally see, you know, Uber pretty much investing resources and time trying to get, you know, market share on this industry.
But the world is changing very fast. And you have worked with transportation for some years. Can you tell us a little bit about this transformation in the market when we are about to have autonomous cars and autonomous trucks? What is the change that is going to happen for people, for entrepreneurs, for big companies, big established companies?
Yeah. Well, what I was discussing is, like a couple of weeks ago, I had a discussion with John Scully, which is, you know, the former CEO of Apple, and we were in this session, and I was telling pretty much my position was that we're entering into a world where I see rapid commoditization of technology. So before, you know, investors, they ask barriers to entry and network effect. You know, for me, I think that's bullshit right now. Anybody can build an autonomous car. I was in Argentina last week, and there's 2 guys with 0 money. They build one, and it works amazingly well. You know, and it's incredible. You know, it's like it's in Buenos Aires. It's insane. So anybody can build an autonomous car right now. Anybody can build a drone. I have a friend, a Mexican friend, that he's built. You know, he has no background in biotech, and he's doing early cancer detection using microRNA, you know, and he's doing it very, very well, and he's very accurate in his results. So, you know, biotech, drones, artificial intelligence, that's the other area, you know. You have Google open source TensorFlow, which is, you know, a framework for artificial intelligence, deep learning. So anybody can actually implement AI, you know, especially right now in these days with AI is the buzzwords for investors. So we're entering into a world where technology is going to commoditize very, very fast. And we need to be prepared not only as consumers, but also as companies. Network effect on the other side. You know, network effect, we see, you know, Pokemon Go getting from 0 to 200 million users in 3 months and then losing 12 million users a week. So we see, you know, people very highly active in Snapchat. As soon as Instagram comes up, you know, with stories, people are switched. So at the end of the day, we're heading to a world where there's no loyalty. There's just about convenience. So I think the winners are going to be the companies that are able to adapt as fast as possible to changes and are always ahead of the curve. And I don't think we should get scared about this, but I think it's something that we should have in mind because it's going to happen and we cannot stop it. On the AI, just to finish this thought, on the AI front, I see AI coming in 2 waves. The first wave is going to give superpowers to humans, which is, you know, augmented reality, some task automation, some scripts, you know, autonomous cars. Autonomous cars, you know, the first autonomous cars that they're going to release, you're going to need to be in the driver's seat. So it's more like giving you superpowers. So you fall asleep and then the cars wake you up, stuff like that. So the second wave is when AI takes control of, you know, of jobs, you know, human jobs. And they are predicting that by 2025, 50% of the jobs are going to be, you know, pretty much done by robots. So here the problem is how humans are going to react to this, you know. But at the end of the day, it's going to be like the Industrial Revolution when machines start to do things that humans were supposed to do before. I think we're entering to a new industrial revolution era, you know, for the first time in history that we're alive. So again, things are happening. They're going to keep happening. We just need to be ready and prepare.
Great. And you have co-founded a company, Uber. that is redefining society. What would you say is the main role of an entrepreneur? What should they do?
Well, I don't know, but I can tell you from my experiences, an entrepreneur, I think, we're glorifying entrepreneurship, and what I tell people is, look, this is not an easy job, and this is not something that you want to be. This is something that you are. I was, everybody right now, obviously, I'm in a very good position, but before I spent 10 years of my life with, zero salary, living with my, pretty much with my wife's salary, so that's just my first investor, that's what I said, pretty much like sleeping in a very, very small apartment and, not giving up, like just keep working, waking up, going to work and struggling. So this is like, an entrepreneur is like 90%, it sucks 90% of the time, and it doesn't suck like 10% of the time. So, but I think we have this romantic idea about entrepreneurs. So I think the role of an entrepreneur is very easy, is you need to have, you need to fix a real problem, and you have to fix a problem that actually can change society for good, and this is things that, these are my main philosophy of life, is I'm trying to change things or fix industries that can actually help the world to be a better place, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm going to change it forever, but, for example, Uber, I was lucky that, it happened. But waste management is something that, it really bothers me. It's like we're 7 billion people and we are like uncivilized in the way we treat, the environment. So if we can actually change that, that's going to be my next goal. So the same for healthcare, the same for education. So the role of entrepreneur is just do your thing and change things, one by one, and don't quit. If you just want to be in conferences or Twitter or publications, then you're not an entrepreneur. You're like a social media star.
That's right. You're doing a lot of things already, but when you look into the future, what are the opportunities or projects that can get you excited with?
Education. I think education is the only way. Democracy sucks because lack of education. That's the reality. The reality is that we live in a world where education has been taken hostage by a group of people and denied, to the rest of the world. So there's no reason right now, for the first time in history, we have technology to democratize education. And I see this, I travel around the world trying, I'm meeting with people, especially, for example, myself, I come from a town where the industry is pretty much agriculture. I was the only weird guy interested in computer. And I was able to start to learn how to code because of the internet. My university had no infrastructure for teaching, coding. So right now, my daughter, she goes to school, she's 6, and she's coding already, which is crazy. So I really want, to live in a world where any single kid has access to high-quality education. And for the first time in history, we have the connectivity and the bandwidth. The problem with education is you have the access, the problem of accessibility, but also you have the bandwidth. You have limited resources of good professors and teachers. But what if you can actually have access to every single person in the world? And we're almost there. And what if you can create a robot, an AI, that can teach you, and it can actually, based on your progress, can adapt itself to actually personalize education. So, so I'm talking to a couple of companies that they're doing that, and this is for me, the next is how can we create a virtual professor that can learn from you as a student and can create a curriculum based on your progress, on your pace, and identify you as a student. So I think we're very close together. It might sound crazy, but I don't think it is. For me, that's the next frontier. It's if you actually nail education, you can solve like 40% of the problems of the world. including terrorism.
Perfect, thanks. We have 5-10 minutes to questions from the audience. Someone? Any question?
They're shy.
They are very shy today. I think they're just getting excited with. I have another question. What do you think is the? Do you think that initiatives just like this one that we have here at Cubo, that brings together people just to talk about entrepreneurship, new business models, new ways of working, new ways of looking at things, do you think that initiatives like this help, and how they can help more?
Well, it definitely helps, you know, to get, when you get people, different people in a room, it's always good, you know, or bad. But there's some...
That depends on the people.
It depends on the people. But I mean, it's going to trigger something, right? To make it more sustainable, you have to have the right structure to support, you know, along the process. Because most of the time, you just come here, you have fun, you drink, you know, you eat, and then you go home, and you don't follow up. One of the things, you know, that makes the U.S. different, you know, than the rest of the world is this support networks, you know. And I'm not talking about only investors, you know. In the U.S., people really help each other, you know. And it's more about ideas rather than who you are as a person. And I'm saying this because I got to, you know, I got to the U.S. like 9 years ago with just like skills, you know, and with a, you know, an appetite for to build stuff. And I found a network, you know, of individuals that they were willing, you know, not only to finance it, but also to contribute, you know, with their talent and also with their connections. So I think this is what we're lacking in Latin America. We're lacking this support networks. We have education, we have venture capital, we have co-working spaces. So we have all the right stuff, but there's no interrelations among them, you know. So if you just have a good idea, but you don't have the right connections or you don't know where to go, nothing's going to happen, you know, with that idea. If you have an idea and a product that is working, but you don't have the right support that is going to take you from, you know, from here to there, then, you know, you're not going to be able to be successful. So I think what is needed in Latin America is we have the right bricks, but we need the glue among these bricks, you know, to hold it together and help, you know, people, you know, to succeed. So I think this initiative, you know, it helps. But I think we should start thinking about how can we hold their hands and work with them along the process, you know?
Which is exactly what we are trying to foster in a place just like this. Mm-hmm. It's the glue that connects people. I said before you arrived.
And I didn't hear you, so, you know.
Yeah. But it's exactly what we are trying to do here. Okay, we have a question here. Talita, please. Do we have a mic, please, for the question? Yes, we do.
Hi. So I think the role models are too far away from Latin American young people. So like Steve Jobs, for example, and maybe that's why in Latin America you don't have a lot of people, young people wanting to be entrepreneurs. So what do you do in your case? You're from Mexico, right? So what do you do in your case to foster entrepreneurship, to be a role model in your home country?
Pretty much what I do is I help people, you know, as, you know, the problem is that I'm not in a position of, I don't have the infrastructure, you know, to help as much as I can, you know, because at my stage in my life, I am prioritizing projects, you know, rather than creating this infrastructure. But I don't think it's about role models, you know. I think it's about culture and change, you know. So basically what I'm doing is, and I'm going to tell you what I'm doing personally. Every single entrepreneur, Mexican entrepreneur that reach out to me and I help, I tell them, I'm going to help you with one condition. You're going to do the same. You know, once you're successful and your project successful, you're going to help people. So it's about educating, you know, other entrepreneurs, you know, to be open. Because what we have here is also a culture where you don't want to collaborate because you're afraid that they're going to steal your idea. Ideas are wordless. It's all about the execution. And this is something that I've been, I have a couple of investments in Mexico, but I am an advisor or mentor I'm a part of Endeavor, Endeavor, I'm an Endeavor entrepreneur, so I talk to a lot of Endeavor, entrepreneurs, but also I'm also mentor, one of the mentors it's a network of women entrepreneurs. So what I do, it's every single time, I take like maybe 10 to 20 meetings a year with women entrepreneurs, and what I tell them is, I'm doing this because I want you to do the same. So it's more about establishing this culture and relationship and changing their minds about be open and collaborate. But I think that, going back to your question, I don't think it's about role models, the lack of role models. It's about, in Latin America, we are, we're not very arrogant, and we should be more arrogant. I'm a very arrogant guy, but I'm always being, I remember when I was like 5 years, 6 years old, I was always questioning, my father, my parents, my teachers, and they thought that I had a problem because I was very arrogant. And I was always questioning, like fair questioning. But I think this arrogance, and I'm talking about good arrogance, brought me, to different places. It's like, okay, if you cannot answer my question here, I'm going to go somewhere else, to ask. So that took me, out of Mexico to Canada and then to Paris because I wanted answers that, I couldn't find. And also when people told me, like, you're not going to be able to build this, you're not going to be able to build that, I don't give a, just did it, The same for healthcare, I had no expertise. So it's a combination of being naive and arrogant, but I think we don't have that in Latin America, because we believe that we downplayed ourselves, and we put limits in our heads. And the reality is that, and that was true maybe 20 years ago because we didn't have access to education, we didn't have access, but right now, if you want to learn something, there's the internet, you can learn anything. So I think new generations, especially millennials, are a little bit more arrogant, which is great. And that is something that it's cultural. It's not about role models. If you look at all these role models, Steve Jobs, he was super arrogant. So all these guys, so arrogance, good arrogance, always help. And this is something that we should actually foster in terms, and not put down. In Latin America, we're very polite, and we play by the rules. We need to stop playing by the rules. And I'm not saying that you should commit crimes. I'm saying it by the social rules in entrepreneurship to move forward. And once you're there, help the people around. That's what what the U.S. do. Successful investors become successful entrepreneurs become angel investors. So this is something that we don't have here, and this is something that I'm actually working on at a personal level. That's why I started investing in Latin America in the past 3 years.
Perfect. We have time for one more question, please.
Hi, Jan Piotrowski from The Economist. You mentioned timing is crucial, and now you mentioned that you've invested in Latin America in the past 3 years. In your experience as a technology entrepreneur, is there a rule for when it is best to invest? Is it good to invest during downturns, like the one that Latin America, and Brazil in particular, is going through now? Or is it better to wait for the upswing? Or is there no rule?
There's no rule. It depends on the industry. Obviously, in the stock market, yeah, it's always, best to invest in when the correction happens, right? But especially in startups, it's all about the problem. How I see it is, the best ideas happen when are the ones that everybody missed, So when people are pouring money in Brazil, like in 2012, 2011, they were putting money. What you do is you drive the price down, and you create this hype and a bubble. So I'm not saying they're not good ideas, but it's going to be very hard to get a good return. And at the end of the day, most of the time, access to capital kills the idea, because you waste your money, you get distracted, you have fiduciary duty, and then you get, So from my perspective is, it's better, to once there's a correction, you look at the who remains there, who are the survival, the survivalists. So you see these industries, and you identify industries that they are they exist, they're old, they're legacy, you know, that they're always going to be here, but they need transformation. So when the correction happens, what's going to happen is you're going to have less capital, therefore you can get better deals as an investor, and you can actually enter the game where nobody is, you know, around you. So you have competitive advantage in terms of timing. And once the market becomes hot, then you have, you know, you have your time on your side. So there's no rule, but what I believe is that, for example, you know, if you look at the first Uber round, every single major VC passed because they just couldn't get it. And this is what I'm seeing right now. You know, it's great company. For example, Snapchat. I didn't believe in Snapchat because I didn't get it, and that was my biggest mistake. You know. Because it's like I didn't get it. First of all, you know, the UI is crazy, you know, but at the end of the day, it turned out to be, you know, a very, very, very successful app. So what I learned, you know, in my life is that you know, you have to identify companies that are survivals. You know, they survive, you know, in the worst economic conditions, and then you start identifying that tells you that the value proposition is actually legit. And then you identify, is this company full of inefficiencies? If the answer is yes, perfect. Is there more, can I fix the inefficiencies? Yes, perfect. How big the opportunity is? The opportunity is so big, perfect, okay. And that all these pieces, you know, fall along. And then also you say, can I bring value to the company? Can I help them build, you know, the technology they need to go forward? And then you take it. And timing plays an important role because at the end of the day, if you are successful, you're going to need capital. So, but once you demonstrate that you are growing and you need to have also the timing so capital is available for you to inject to the company. So I don't think it's a science. I think it's more like it's like cooking. It's like part art, part science. But I think there's something, you know, something there that personally, you know, I'm developing right now, and timing is important, but also it's more important to know the industry very well, you know, before you jump in.
All right, Oscar, thank you very much for coming to Cubo to talk with us. Round of applause to Oscar, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.